Out of the tree of life, I just picked me a plum. You came along and everything started to hum. Still, it's a real good bet, the best is yet to come.
We are the Org. Our mission is to assimilate Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and beer. Lots of beer.
Hello, friends!
Hello!
Welcome to bOrgCast 717. Find out what happened
Last time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Now, this one's completely my fault. Doreen sent some feedback for the episodes we covered last time, but very helpfully I kind of missed them out because they arrived just basically when we got back from holiday. I discovered them and then I'd kind of forgotten them by the time we got to our show, so apologies, completely my fault, but here we are. Let's find out what she thinks of masks. I laughed at the teaser when Troy was trying to get Data to be more expressive with the clay, rather than literally copying, and he just makes a treble clef to represent how music makes him feel. I guess unsurprisingly, this reminded me of the film called Sybil. Never heard of,
No,
so
sorry.
I suspect it doesn't have any spaceships in it. I really like the bit where Data or whoever was teaching Picard about the temple symbol. I think this culture would have been really good at teaching neurodiverse individuals and those with different learning styles. The story for the auditory and word-orientated learners, the picture, though I guess it was a symbol, for the visual learners, and the touch with movement for the kinetic learners. I've even heard of someone who learns best when actually connected to another person. That sounds really bad, but I would now like everyone to retrieve their minds from the gutter, because I didn't mean it like that. I just can't think of another way to say it.
I think it's called modelling.
Right.
Where it's used at the school where I'm chair of governors, where, for example, you might take somebody else's hand and do the action with them so you're physically connected and they can feel how your hand moves.
Aha.
And it's not just about hands,
So
but that's an example.
learning through your muscle feedback from that. Okay,
and
cool.
that's what... But you learn it by being physically connected to somebody who knows how to do whatever it is, and you learn through their muscle movements.
Cool. And Paradise. O'Brien has been in the last two episodes, and this one after not seeing him in ages. Head woman, who reminds me of Janeway, is a dictator. Cool, that's a bit harsh on Janeway, I kind of feeling. Bloody hell. Who should have given the rest of the colony the choice, given she knew she was going to cause the crash landing all along. This makes me think of the relatively recent TV series, The Following. Ooh, again, no spaceships in that one either, I guess. That woman, I don't think she deserves a name, speaks almost as eloquently as Joe Carroll. Not that he deserves a name either. My husband helped me recognise Catherine Sakai from Babylon 5 in the colony. I really hate how Leader Bitch spoke to the thief man at the end in front of everyone, saying he would just have ended up in prison if she hadn't rescued him from Earth. I absolutely hated her lectures in front of the entire community. Sorry about this Christian reference, but it's the only way I can illustrate what I mean. Generally, when Jesus gives lectures to crowds, he is generally speaking up to save an individual and make society take a good long hard look at themselves. Like when the crowd wanted to stone the woman and he told the person who hadn't sinned to throw the first stone. Whereas that stupid, small-minded, ignorant woman is just a grown-up playground schoolyard bully who revels in embarrassing an individual in front of as many people as possible. I couldn't watch this for a second time. Yes, it'd be a long while before I go back to that episode, certainly. Okay, so thank you, Doreen.
Thank you! And sorry we missed it out before. It's always a bit of a struggle to have brains when we come back from our holiday.
Yes, the brain is still asleep. Probably like the phrase "fuck off and die in a bucket of wasps," which is one of your better efforts. Well done.
I had a few people like that one, actually.
Marina Curtis on Twitter. No, she stopped feeding back to bOrgCast, don't worry. But I noticed on Twitter she was asked if there was an episode that made her feel silly whilst filming, and she replied,
"Masks."
Yeah. Perfect bit of timing there. Okay, so how silly, annoying, or whatever will tonight's Deep Space Nine episode be? It's Shadowplay.
It comes without warning, abducting their people.
I've got 22 people who've disappeared.
22 missing people, one by one.
The last victim vanished 6 hours ago.
Without a trace.
My mother's never coming back, is she?
Without a clue.
This colony is undergoing a serious crisis.
Can Odo and Dax solve the mystery before they vanish forever?
This village will cease to exist.
On the next episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
and I'm afraid it just makes me think of Finger Mouse.
Right.
Fingerbobs.
Because there was shadow puppetry in that, was there?
Oh, doesn't one of them have a shadow? Was it Gulliver? And you can see a shadow. One of them had the word shadow in it.
Too long ago. It was
Sorry.
It was that dude with the roll neck pullover and the ascot.
Yes.
Yes. They don't make them like they used to. Probably just as well.
Yes.
That's a trailer. Audibly wise, sound-wise, whatever, isn't spoilery. Visually wise, if you seek it out on YouTube, it gives the whole plot away. Yeah. Showing villagers appearing when Dax is fiddling with the hollow thing. It's like, oh, really? Trailer Man was doing his best, and whoever put the edit together gave away the ending. Oh.
Yeah. So, you start with Dax's science officer's log. She's off to investigate a particle field in the Gamma Quadrant, and because it's the Gamma Quadrant, Odo's coming along in case there's any clues to his origins.
Ain't no field like a particle field. I don't know, that's probably not a thing, is it? Sorry.
I don't know, maybe you just made it a thing. Anyway, Dax is trying to have the sort of conversation with Odo that she tends to have with anybody else she's involved about with, talking about people and relationships.
Who's shagging who, and
Yeah, but it would appear that she's inadvertently dobbed someone into Odo.
Yes, one of his security officers is involved in a relationship, and he's wouldn't. Oh, that's why she's distracted.
Yeah, and she's trying to say, no, that's not what I meant, and he talks about the humanoid foolish preoccupation with romantic coupling. And Dax then tries to say that there's a Bolian woman who's rather interested in Odo.
She does utter the phrase, we don't see true love even when it's staring us in the face. Strokey chin.
Yeah.
It's a great scene, though.
Yeah, it is.
Fun start to the ep.
And I like it that, he's sort of like, isn't this a bit of a sort of an inappropriate subject? And she's like, after 7 lifetimes, all the appropriate ones are boring.
Yeah.
I like that. So they come across this, what turns out to be an Omicron particle field, which is very rare, only created by certain types of antimatter reactions, and it's in a small valley. They can't really get their sensors to work properly, so they beam down. Now, if their sensors are fucked, why are the transporters not fucked?
Different technology.
Okay,
yeah,
fair enough.
Not a problem, I don't think.
Then there's lots of interference, but they find this sort of object plenty thing as a source.
In the middle of the village, yeah.
Yeah.
The village is a modified version of the set that was used in Thine Own Self. The one where Data was Frankenstein, effectively. Don't know if it looked familiar or not. But
Oh, the one with can't remember what radioactive means?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I did think it looked vaguely familiar.
Yeah, that would be why. It's a bit like Star Trek at this point gets a bit like Hammer films, where they'd make the film back to back and use the same set but slightly redress it. Well, that's exactly what Star Trek's doing here between Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, and it's quite sensible to do. I mean, it's a nice set, and fair enough. I actually modified a Memory Alpha page for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah, I know it was a brave step for me, but it didn't mention that fact, and I thought, well, I know that's true, and I did a bit of research, and yes, it was indeed true, so I stuck it at Memory Alpha, and that was a week ago, and it's still there now. Hey, go me.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, geek pride.
So Dax wants to scan this plinty thing, and Odo's concerned they're going to be found, but too late, there's a bloke with a phaser.
Yeah, pointed at them, which is a good episode ending.
Yeah, end teaser, yeah.
Yep.
So then, when we come back after the teaser, you've got Quark, and he's in his bar with the lights down, and he's clearly waiting for somebody, and he's impatient. He's like, oh, it's about time, but it's Kira. And it's really rather obvious it's not her he was waiting for.
Yep.
And she says that his cousin was trying to sell stolen goods from a museum.
Cousin Kono. Sorry, Kono just sounds like a clown to me. I'm just imagining a Frank with a big red nose and a white face.
Did you think that he wouldn't be seen trying to nick the stuff if he was a living statue? And now you've earwormed me with polka dot afro from Madagascar 3.
No!
Circus, afro, circus, afro, polka dot, afro.
Really?
Oh no! That I hate that film just because of that. Oh. And the kids just non-stop sang that lyric as well. It's like, that's not the original lyric, stop it! Oh. And now I'm going to have to put it on the podcast Share the pain. Share the pain. Well, I didn't mention the polka dot afro business. That's
you mentioned
completely
clowns.
you. So that doesn't necessarily lead you to Madagascar 3.
Does me.
Anyway,
it's that or Stephen King's It. I don't want to shit myself.
Yes, quite. Let's not dwell on that.
No. Anyway, sorry. Kira gives Quark a talking to, and he's all like,
Major, you make it sound like you don't like me.
Don't like you? You collaborated with the Cardassians. You cheat your customers, and you're a danger to this station. I don't just not like you. I despise you.
Sorry I mentioned it.
It's awesome. So then you cut to the C plot, because you've got 3. You've got the Gamma Quadrant, Kira, and Jake Sisko.
Mm-hmm. And this is sort of following on from the plot strands that was sowed in our previous Deep Space Nine episode, Paradise, which began with Sisko asking O'Brien if he'd effectively give his son an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And we had said at the time, is this Jake's idea, or is this coming from Sisko? Turns out, it's coming from Sisko. Pushy father.
Yeah, and Jake's like, what do I need a job for? Which you can understand in a civilization with no money.
Yes, quite. I don't need no money.
And Sisko's like, you're 15. I had a job when I was 15. I'm thinking, oh, please. When will people learn that because I had to do something when I was your age isn't justification for making somebody else do it? It should be justification for you preventing anybody else doing it.
Yes, sharing misery.
Better,
sharing
not
misery.
Better. Yes. Learn. If we're supposedly in an enlightened civilization, that should have gone out the window ages ago. Anyway, he says, he's arranged it with the chief. And Jake does not look thrilled.
No.
Back in the Gamma Quadrant, Odo and Dax have been accused of nicking people. Odo shows that, if they'd done anything wrong, they could have already got away, beams up, and then beams down again, which does change the guy's attitude towards them. It turns out 22 people are missing, and there is absolutely no leads, and what does he call himself?
Well, he's Protector...
Protector, that's it.
Collius, who's played by Kenneth Mars. He was in The Producers and Young Frankenstein, which I do remember his face from that. Great film, Young Frankenstein. He was also the voice of Triton in The Little Mermaid.
Right.
Yeah, you're not likely to be recognising him from that. He's another veteran of Magnum P.I., that's a reoccurring theme, isn't it? And was several voices in the Fonz and the Happy Days Gang cartoon. Remember that?
We got it all together now, gang. The Fonz. His doggy name, Mr. Cool, and the Good Group. One flaky time machine, and a future chick named Cupcake. Oh, now the gang got zapped into that time machine, and they're like traveling through time. My. They do not dig where that machine is going, but they sure hope to get back to 1957 Milwaukee. Can you dig it? Yeah!
Hey!
I remember the
Mr. Cool with the dog.
No, I don't remember the cartoon at all.
Oh, the cartoon was awesome. They time travelled.
Really?
Yes, I mean it was just completely wacky. It took the sitcom, and then just made it this crazy Hanna-Barbera cartoon with a talking dog and the Fonz,
really?
and both of them put the comb through their hair and went, "Hey, oh, I can't believe you missed out on that." Must be an age thing. Oh,
okay. You'll have to show me later, won't you?
Oh yes.
Okay.
You'll be hearing the theme tune and all.
Fine. Okay. But no, that passed me by, I'm afraid.
He's a great actor in this, though. He's quite fun. Yeah. He's wearing... all the blokes seem to wear these crazy hipster bead hats, which can't be comfortable.
Are they wearing anal beads in the wrong place?
No, I don't know. On the head. I don't know.
Sorry. I've just got a dirty mind, haven't I?
You have, yes. And when Odo's beamed up to the runabout and then beams back down again, he's sitting down. So does that mean he beams onto the runabout sort of crouched and then beams straight back again so that he's still sat in the chair? It seems a bit odd, really. Look
They
very.
normally stand up, so they're standing up. So presumably he does bean back and then falls on his arse.
Yes,
maybe that's why there's
and
a
then
little bit of...
and then crouches up to beam back down again, so he's on the chair properly.
So maybe that's why there's a little bit of a delay, and Dax has to say, you know, that you'll be back in a minute because he fell on his arse in the runabout.
We also then meet Rurigan, who's kind of the leader of this village, or the elder, perhaps. Yeah. He's played by Kenneth Tobey, who's a wonderful actor. So he appeared in 100 movies, over 100 movies, before his death in 2002.
Whoa.
Including, he played the projectionist in Gremlins 2. He was in Airplane, and he was way back in the Thing from Another World, the original Thing movie. We also meet his granddaughter, Taya, who was played by Noli Thornton. Did she seem familiar to you?
Yes, but I couldn't tell you where from.
Next Generation, Season 5's imaginary friend.
Oh, yeah.
She was Clara Sutter.
Yes.
She was also in an episode of Quantum Leap, but hasn't acted since 1998. Okay. Which is a shame, because she seems like a really good actress in this. Yeah. And I love the costume. All the women wear bones in their hair. For some bizarre reason, but it looks really cool, actually. Far better than the beady hat look that the men are rocking.
Anal beads in the wrong place, yeah.
Bead
Sorry.
Oh, dear.
Sorry. Anyway.
Back to the plot.
Yes. The Protector, you can tell, no longer believes that Odo and Dax are guilty, but he just does this sigh, and I love the actor's body language and how he conveys disappointment. Really, I have no suspects. You are my only leads. And it's just like, yeah. But Odo offers to help. And he asks to start with the most recent disappearance, which is Old Bloke's daughter. What's the old bloke's name? I just wrote Old Bloke in my notes all the way through.
Rurigan.
Yes. Okay. Rurigan. Okay. So, speaks to Rurigan, who's a bit surly. And then says that the last person who saw his daughter was his granddaughter, Taya, who in my notes appears as T. How do you spell her name?
Taya.
Oh, okay. He starts to ask some questions, but doesn't get to ask much because supposedly it's Taya's bedtime. Mm-hmm. Then on the station, you've got Jake and the chief, and you've got Jake's in a... I don't know whether it's supposed to be an engineering cadet apprentice onesie thing.
No, I think this is just one of his standard onesies. He's in civvies because he's not actually in Starfleet. So, in the same way as Wesley Crusher in Season 1 wore his own dire jumpers.
Yeah. I suppose what struck me is this one doesn't happen to look particularly like a bus seat.
No, it's one of his better onesies, it has to be said, in two-tone brown. But that's a vast improvement on some of the Vobbit stuff he wears.
Cisco calls him Mr. Cisco, which I like. I thought that was sweet.
Yeah.
Gives him a comm badge. And off he goes to start work for the chief. And then you have Kira asking Bashir to keep an eye on Quark. And Bashir initially is like, me? Keep on, you want me to spy? Whatever. And then suddenly it's almost like something clicks his brain. Like, oh, I can use all the things that Garak's been teaching me. I just like this.
Garak's apprentice. Always two there are.
Yeah.
And it's nice for Garak to get a mention, even though he's not in the episode. And when I was watching this through the first time, I was like, oh, has it got Garak in it? And it's like, oh, he isn't. But it's nice to get a mention anyway.
Yeah, it is. And I love Kira's face as well when she realises, you know, and when you get the tippy tappy, she goes, Kira, you can just hear it in her voice as well. I like it.
You idiot. Yeah.
But in an endearing way,
yes,
you know?
He's being an endearing idiot. Yeah.
Yes. And the reason for the tippy tappy is Vedette Bareil is on the station, ostensibly to preach at the station shrine, but she wanted to see Kira. And then when she goes to meet him, it turns out the station shrine thing is a pretext.
Yeah.
Really, he wanted to see Kira, and he's going to go to the station shrine at the same time. It's kind of the other way around. And she says that, you know, she's honoured to see him, and he's like, honoured? Oh, not happy. And it's just like, oh. Back to the Gamma Quadrant, and Odo speaks to Taya to find out what happened to her mum, and she's like, what happened to your face? And then he's like, well, I'm a shapeshifter, but I don't do faces very well. And then she's all like, well, you mean you were changeling? Like, yeah, changelings are make-believe. I'm not make-believe, I'm here, you know.
But it's a nice tie into Season 1's Vortex, the one with Croden, where, you know, again, the changelings seemed like a myth, but we find out differently.
Yep. And then she was like, oh, if I was a changeling, I'd want to change into things all the time and I'd have loads of friends. And he was like, no, I had people asking me to change into things a lot of the time, but they weren't really my friends. They just wanted me to entertain them. And it's just like a really nice interchange.
Yes, no, the two characters play off each other really nicely. It's very sweet. I mean, here's a child actor who is not in any way annoying. She's just completely endearing. It's brilliant.
Yeah. She says that, you know, her dad died when she was young and she misses her mum, and he's like, you know, well, I don't know who my parents are, and they bond, don't they? Mm-hmm. And it's really nice. And then he talks about leaving the valley, and it's like, oh, we never leave the valley. We've got everything we need right here. Which is the point that I remembered.
Mm-hmm. Remembered how the plot turned out from here onwards.
Yeah.
But it was quite nice it took that long anyway. Unfortunately, when I was reading up the notes to make the notes before watching this through the first time, it gave away the plot ending, and it was like, oh, darn it, I'd forgotten that was the twist.
See, that's why I don't want to listen to or watch the trailer until I've watched the episode.
No, that's fine, but I in order to be able to properly research these things, ultimately you're going to come across spoilers.
No, but you watch it through twice, so why don't, when you watch it through the first time and then do the research?
It helps me order the research I've already done if I sit through it. It makes some sense to me. Don't worry, carry on.
Fine.
Don't look behind the curtain. There's not
even... Fair enough. But yes, the reason I remembered is she's like, you know, nobody ever leaves the valley, and it's like, why not? It's like, we have everything we need right here. And it's like, okay.
What's that song about the valley?
There's a Paul Simon one that starts down.
No, it's
in
from
the
an
valley.
advert.
An advert? Oh.
Yeah.
No, I've no idea about adverts.
Is it the Jolly Green Giant one?
Good things from the garden in the valley, valley of the jolly, ho, 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 Green Giant.
What?
I'm not sure. Anyway, carry on.
Are you on the same planet as everybody else?
I don't know. It's been a long week, I tell you.
Okay. Then you have a load of... It's Jake and the Chief, and you've got a lot of isolinear rods lined up, and they've all got different colour codes.
Oh gosh, yes, this is anal engineer stuff, isn't it?
This is thrilling. And Jake's like, I'm never going to remember that. And I'm sitting there thinking, I wouldn't either. And then he ends up confiding to the Chief that he doesn't want to go to the academy. And then O'Brien tells this odd story about how he was destined to be a cello player. And I cannot see O'Brien as a cello player.
We have seen O'Brien as a cello player.
Have we?
Yes, in Season 3's Ensigns of Command. He plays the cello along with Data playing something. So this is a nice bit of continuity that, you know, way back in the third season of Next Generation, he was shown to be playing the cello, and they've tied it into this. It's brilliant.
Wow. I just don't see him as a cello player. Oh well. Anyway. And there's stories about, you know, that's what his dad wanted him to be, and he won a scholarship and yada yada, but actually what he did was ran away and enlisted in Starfleet, which made his dad angry. And then Jake's like, I don't want to disappoint my dad. And I like this because the Chief is like, your dad's a good bloke. Your dad's a good guy. You tell him.
Mm-hmm.
Which I like. Then you get Varial and Kira. And he gave, well, they call it a speech, but I presume it means a sermon.
Sermon, yeah, I thought that was a weird way of describing it, as a speech.
And she really doesn't agree with it at all. And she's like, how can you take a prophecy and make it mean the exact opposite of what everybody else says it means?
He's a good liberal, isn't he?
And yeah, she passionately disagrees with him. And so like, well, why don't we talk about something else? So,
like the dog sneezing.
Sorry. And he mentions a few things that are clearly boring, and then mentions spring ball. And she's like, oh, I'm into spring ball. And he's like, let's go play a game.
What does spring ball make you think of? I tell you what, it makes me think. I'm sure this is what we called it, spring ball. I did some.
You mean swing ball?
Swing ball. That's what it made me. I think it's called tetherball in the States, but because it's got kind of a spring thing at the top that pops if you got it further enough.
Is that what you think?
I'm thinking that Brian and Kieran played swing ball. You're a bit old for that, aren't you?
Oh dear. I presumed it was some version of tennis. That was
presumably, yes. That certainly matches what they end up wearing, complete with awful. 80s headband. Yes.
Oh, I know. I'm surprised neither of them at any point said, "You cannot be serious."
Yes. You can imagine Kira's a McEnroe, can't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Quite like to listen to her grunting as she plays, though. Anyway, moving on.
But anyway, as they mentioned spring ball, and you see him going into the lift in all these long robes, you and I both had the same thought.
Yeah, it's like, they're not going to play in that, is he? No. Imagine me playing football in my cassock, you know.
No. So then you're back in the Gamma Quadrant, And Odo talks to Taya's granddad, who seems unconcerned. And I'm just like, yes, but I can see the pain in your eyes. And he says he's dying. And he keeps saying there's nothing he can do to bring the disappeared people back. And then we have another appearance of Columbodo, and just one more thing.
Yeah, he says, can I leave? He says, oh, just one more thing. It's a great investigation scene, though. This is Odo at his best, isn't it, when he's interrogating somebody.
And he says, have you any idea why nobody's ever left the valley? And he says that when he spoke to the Protector, he said, have you looked outside the valley? And he seemed really surprised at the concept, and it's, that threw him. And then he's just like, well, they have no reason to go outside the valley. Go away, leave me alone. Kind of grumpy. But you can tell that Odo is onto something.
I'm sure it's the Valley of the Giant, the Jolly Green Giant that's going around my head now. It's terrible.
Okay, fine. So then you have Dax and Odo and Taya walking down this cliff at the edge of the village. And Tia's telling fairy stories about the changeling who was persuaded to change into grain bread and get eaten.
Yeah.
Which I like the story, and Odo guesses the ending. And she's like, how did you guess that he got eaten? And Odo's like, it wasn't a very clever changeling in your story. She's like,
could you turn into a loaf of grain bread?
I suppose I could.
Show me.
And let you gobble me up? I don't think so.
Yeah, I like the interchange. They get to the end, and Dax is holding the scanner that she'd been given after hers didn't work. And she takes a step and it disappears. And they realise that, this is a hollow projection, and they persuade Tia to not go any further. But she puts her arm through, and it disappears, although thankfully it rematerialises when she puts her arm back the other side. So, armed with this new knowledge, Dax and Odo go back to the Protector, and they demonstrate that it's a hollow projector with his cloak. And he's like, that's my favourite cloak. And initially he's sceptical, but you can tell he's not totally closed-minded. So like, his scepticism
He's a lovely character, isn't he?
Yeah, his scepticism is understandable.
All three of these characters have got real personality, and I just love the way they're written.
So then they're like, we can show you where Taya's arm disappeared. And he's like, I think you better. Not grumpy and just, which I like. Then you're back with Kira and Barile, and they end up talking after Spring Ball, which then leads to kissing. But Barile ends up left with washing up, because he ends up saying that the guy who invited Barile over owes money to Quark. And she's
gambling Vedic! How my life! He's causing quite a scandal. Oh, right, okay. It's one of those priests, is he?
Oh, dear.
It's that, or he's got a bad alcohol or smoking habit.
Yeah.
With a look on Kira's face, she's mid-smooch, and suddenly the penny drops. Hang on.
Yes. Back in the Gamma Quadrant.
Back in the Gamma Quadrant should really be an album by somebody, I can't help feeling. Don't you think?
Okay. Who?
I don't know, but it'd be like back in the USSR, but,
Oh, maybe we should suggest that René Aubergenois does an album.
Maybe.
Or maybe not. I don't know if he can sing. If he can't sing, don't do an album.
I've never heard him sing, so that rather suggests that he can't. But anyway.
Sorry. You're on Planet Strange tonight.
I'm Planet Random tonight, yes. Valley of the Jolly Green Giant.
The villagers agree to shut down the hollow emitter for repairs. So that's what they do. And old bloke, what was his name? Rurigen or something?
Yeah, Rurigen.
Uri Geller. Anyway, Uri Geller's still there.
I bent my spoon.
He used to live on another planet, and he was happy there until the Dominion took over.
Dun, dun, dun. Yep, another mention of the Dominion.
Yep.
And they don't sound like very nice people.
No. So he moved to this planet and used a hollow generator to recreate his village. And then he's like, but it's all over now. Got to say goodbye and whatever. And Odo's like, oh, Tia says she's real. She's real to me. Just because she's a hologram. He created the Uri Geller created the program 30 years ago, and Tia's only 10. So she is real. Who's to say that the technical definition of reality, as in not a hollow projection, is the right one?
But she's still a hologram. Maybe. But I saw the way you held her hand when she was sad. I saw the way you tried to comfort her when she was frightened. I didn't want her to get hurt. If she's not real, what does it matter? It matters. It matters to me. Why should it matter to you if a hologram cries? Because I love her.
And she loves you.
Don't you see? She's real to you. And she's real to me, too. They're all real. And you can't turn your back on them now.
And I really like the argument and the logic.
Oh, and the acting. I can't if Toby makes me blub, but he's made me blub twice now. Oh, so sweet.
Yeah. And he's like, talks about holding her hand. He's like, well, because I love her.
Oh.
He's just like, oh. Back on the station, Jake says he doesn't want to join Starfleet and never has. Starfleet is too much his dad and he needs to find what's him.
Mm-hmm.
And Sisko responds that, that makes sense, but he asks Jake to find something he loves.
Yeah, this is... Yeah, oh. Well done, Sisko.
Yeah.
Good dad.
Yeah. And then Kira goes to see Quark.
Yeah.
Having found Quark's cousin, with some relics from a museum.
Kona the clown has been caught red-handed.
Yes. And she says,
Parlar Rit tells me that you encouraged him to invite Bareil onto the station.
Is that a crime?
Not at all. I just wanted to thank you. I found him very diverting.
Diverting enough.
Which I like. Back in the Gamma Quadrant, Uri Geller asks Odo and Dax not to tell anyone else that he isn't a hologram, because he doesn't want to be treated any differently. So that they're fine with that. They turn it on and it all works.
Turned it off and on again. Solution.
Yeah, counts
Wonderful.
10. Well, I presume they do say they've done something in the meantime.
Oh, she's rebooted it, hasn't she? So
yeah.
Teo's
found her mum. She's really happy. And then she says she'll miss Odo.
Yeah, they're blubbed again.
It's like,
this episode made me a real blubby mess when I watched it last week. And it brought me to tears again this time, and not quite as bad.
And then, right at the end, just as he's about to go, Odo turns into a spinning top.
Yeah, which is, for the time, a very good effect. It looks a bit creaky now, but
at the time
it
particularly
good.
For telly, not a movie at the time.
Yeah. Apparently, they had real trouble filming that because Rene had an ear infection.
Oh gosh, I don't know if he's going to spin round
he did a quarter of a turn and then fell over because he had no balance. So it was very difficult for them to do that. But it looked, considering the time and stuff, it looked good.
Yeah. I like this episode.
It's lovely, isn't it? And really clever the way they've got 3 different plots. None of them overstays their welcome. None of them feel undercooked.
Yeah. And none of them come out of nowhere either. Because you've had the lead in with
Sisko
changelings in season 1.
Yeah.
And Odo wanted... And also there was the... How long ago was it with the iron filings? And they found, you know what I mean? And the idea that Odo comes from the Gamma Quadrant and wants to look into it, that's been the seed's been sown.
I suppose arguably the only one that comes out of nowhere is Kono the clown, but and we never hear about him again. So this is one of Quark's many relatives that get one mention and that's it. So So Kono is our Mitchell of the week.
Mitchell with a polka dot afro.
Circus, Afro, circus, Afro, circus, Afro, polka dot, Afro, circus,
I like to move it, I like to move it.
No, not again. You git.
Anything to get away from the bloody sweet corn advert.
Valley of the Jolly Green Giant. No. That's why I'm remembering the Valley of the Jolly Green Giant from. It's Demolition Man.
Good things from the garden in the valley of the Jolly Green Giant. Good things from the garden.
there's that taco place they go to where there's like a guy singing adverts, and one of the adverts he sings is the Jolly Green Giant one.
God, you've got an obscure memory.
I can't argue with that.
Somebody singing adverts in a movie as a really tiny plot point for when they go to a taco place.
Sorry.
Why can you remember that? And then something like, where have you put something down is just...
Yeah, where are my glasses? I can't remember that. Moving on. Apparently this was originally going to be an Inception-like story with Dax and O'Brien in it, caught in a holographic prison where they think they've escaped, but actually they're still locked away and it's all in their heads.
Like Frame of Mind.
Well, I was going to say, like a later episode, but I'm not going to mention the episode name.
Yeah.
So, yes, we will see that sort of idea worked into later plots, but I'm not going to say anything more than that. So, yeah, we like this one.
Yes.
Splendid. Let's find out what other people think, shall we?
Yes.
Who to start with? Ho, ho, ho. Well, before I forget her, let's do Doreen.
That's a good idea.
My thoughts on Shadowplay. I made these notes weeks ago when Deep Space Nine Season 2 came up on my rental list for Love Film. Cool overhead shot of Quark at the empty Dabo table. Jake coming-of-age storyline. I like how he takes hold of the reins of his own life at only 15 and how Sisko reacts. Yeah, that's lovely, that. Avery Brooks is a great actor, so is Cyril Lofton for that matter. He just had less time to practice his craft, but as far as I'm concerned, he hits the ground running.
Yeah, he does.
I like how Odo proves their innocence to the Protector, the kind of thing geeks might be shouting at the screen in less well-written series.
That's true, actually.
I quite like how the wee actress who plays Taya and the interactions between Taya and Odo are really quite cute, in my humble opinion. There they are.
Yeah, they are.
Nice conversation about Odo's backstory, so that it doesn't feel too much like exposition. Bringing Vedek Bareil aboard as a distraction for Kira was nice and a good bit of continuity. The villagers have odd costumes,
Yep.
I find them quite homely and homespun. Somehow they seem different but not stupid. Miles has a nice backstory discussion with Jake too. There we are. Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you.
Don't disagree with any of that. Who next? Ooh, do you want to read Sampo's feedback? Well, you're going to.
And Sampo writes, "Hello, Orgs. Here's some feedback for Shadowplay. This was quite a boring episode for me.
Oh dear.
And taking into account how last week's feedback went, I'm half expecting everyone else to love this episode."
Ooh,
Oopsie.
well, we've yet to find out.
That's okay.
Yes, we shall have to nickname you the Minority Report, I think, but that's no bad thing. Always good to have another opinion. Why is it boring, Sampo? Tell us.
He says, the three plots have nothing to do with each other.
There's no overarching theme, really, is there? I don't think. So that's a fair point, but it doesn't bother me.
Isn't the theme love?
Oh, that's a very vague theme, isn't it? Let's face it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay. The plot about Jake not wanting to go to Starfleet was okay. Mm-hmm. The relationship between Jake and Sisko is something I enjoy, but this time the whole situation went exactly as one would expect. It didn't really keep me interested.
I suppose there are no surprises in that, but I still find it sweet, so it doesn't bother me. And it's character development for Jake, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Had it come out of nowhere, I think it'd add more of a point, but the fact this follows straight on from the setup before. I mean, this is the show starting to develop into a more soap opera-y sort of entity. Certainly not anything we've seen from Star Trek before. These ideas of these characters developing, not within individual stories, but actually overlapping with stories and things. We're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah. Also, it was short. I mean, if there'd been a whole blooming plot around that...
Oh yeah, a whole episode.
It wouldn't have worked.
Quite.
And Sampo says, then there's the plot of Quark get Kira some action to get some peace. Which sounds excellent in theory, but in practice it falls flat. The biggest problem is Bareil. I've mentioned this before, but I really don't like his acting.
Aha.
I guess he's trying to play a holy man, but it's excruciatingly bland to watch.
Oh.
He and Kira seem to have even less chemistry than last time.
He does play it in a very mannered way, which I think I mentioned before. It doesn't bother me because perhaps I know people rather like him.
Yeah.
There is a certain section of people in Ministry whose emotional range seems very limited, and he fits into that box quite nicely. So I think he may have studied some priests actually. Maybe drawing from experience here, but maybe it isn't so interesting for somebody who isn't used to that.
You see, I think of his portrayal as the people I know, not necessarily in Ministry, but who feel the need, for whatever reason, to project a calm persona.
Yes.
Now, bearing in mind that my understanding anyway is that the idea of Vedex is based on Buddhism, you can get where the idea of projecting a calm persona comes from.
Having said that, I love the way he goes, let's go play spring ball. He's suddenly got sort of an enthusiastic bit to him. But anyway, clearly that...
Well, but he feels that he can be himself with Kira.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to do the calm persona anymore.
It's because he's in love. Anyway, carry on.
Sorry. To carry on from Sampo's point, what I was going to say is that's the vibe I get, is that this is a man keeping everything under wraps. And the reason you don't get much of a performance is because the idea is the character of Belial is keeping all those emotions under wraps in order to project this holy, calm persona that isn't necessarily really him. And Sampo says, and in the end, Quark just gets foiled with all the interesting stuff happening off screen.
Kind of.
No,
you wanted to see Conan the Clown, didn't you?
Yes.
If we'd have seen Conan the Clown, I think Sampo would have been happy. Yes, enough. Moving on.
I want to see what he nicked from the museum as well. Actually.
Well, wasn't it a bones
or something?
Statue or something carved from Cardassian bones, presumably. It sounded really yucky.
Sounded freaky. He says, the stuff with Odo and Dax on the planet was all right. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything special either. It didn't help that when the little girl said no one leaves the valley, I remembered they were all holograms. Same here. Yeah. If you've seen it once before, I think the clues are there for you to guess first time round. But it's like the O'Brien one that we had. You know,
Whispers. I didn't find this as bad as Whispers because this has those lovely character interactions that are heartwarming, and I could watch this episode every week for the rest of my life.
I couldn't, but it does lose something on a rewatch. I think.
Oh yeah, but obviously the first time you watch it, it's like, oh, they're all holograms, and that's such a cool idea. Yeah. We haven't come across this before. We of course, later on we'll have more about ongoing holograms, but more of that later.
Yeah. And Zambo says, I did find it amusing that when Odo and Dax discovered the truth, they just went and told everybody. One would assume they would be a little more discreet about it. But then again, everyone seemed to be fine. Maybe it was included in their programming.
Well, they did it gently by making his cloak disappear rather than making one of the people disappear, which freaked everybody out. Yes. So they could have been less blatant.
Yeah. But the best part of this was the discovery that the old man, Uri Geller as we're calling him, was in fact a real person, and the discussion after that.
I love the way that's shot because you don't know him initially because he's stood behind the projector, and then the camera pans around and it's like, oh, there's somebody there. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, and Sabo says, why should it matter to you if a hologram cries? It's a great quote. It is. It's a good discussion. He says, but still quite bored by this episode. Still looking forward to the next broadcast, so hear what you think about it. Until next time, Sampo.
Oh, well, there we go. We have a spectrum of different reactions. That's always cool.
Yes.
Thank you, Sampo.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have The Mark. Shadowplay, or oh, good God, a holodeck story. Yeah, almost, but it's not a holodeck, is it? It's interesting. Amiable but pedestrian. There you go. I have now put more effort in than the writers did. Welcome to Planet Holodeck, and we get obvious definition of life analysis, since these holograms are all sentient. The plot, however, is more or less perfunctory. Will Odo and Dax repair the projector and save the village? Of course they fucking will. This also was another episode to drop hints about the Dominion. I thought they did a great job of gradually bringing this menace to the fore. Yep. The FX shot that opens Shadowplay is the shot that opens Paradise in reverse. They just flipped the shot to save money. Oh, there you are, I didn't recognise that. So this holographic system simulates illness, assuming they have any, pregnancy and childbirth, including presumably all the messiness that goes with it. Very thorough. Hey, it's just like Fallout Shelter, apparently. Odo and Dax are an interesting combination that don't quite work for me. Yeah, they have very little in common, don't they? So they don't spark off each other like some of the other characters do. But having said that, I do love the whole thing about, Dax talking about relationships, and that's being so out of Odo's comfort zone. So that worked quite well. The little girl goes from having an imaginary friend to being an imaginary friend. Oh, nice one! Well done, sir. There you are. So yeah, perhaps he's closer to the Sampo camp then.
Yeah,
Maybe Sampo isn't alone in not thinking so much of this. Perhaps it's just me that blubs really easily. I think it's time for some MP3 feedback on this now, and yeah, yet again, just in time, we have the Argyle Smurf. The man has got the timing down to a fine art.
Hello everybody, this is Damien once again, the Argyle Smurf, and I once again talk at you, this time regarding Shadowplay. And I'm going to get this one out of the way right out the gate. I did not hate this episode. And I'm having to say that because no matter how I try and phrase this particular feedback, it sounds like I hate this episode. And I really didn't. I've just got a lot of holes to pick in it, which, isn't great. But it's not as bad as the last one. Speaking of which, why have they put this directly after the last episode? Because, okay, so this episode starts with the two people in a runabout travelling on a survey thing, and they find a planet with a colony on it, a very small colony, which they weren't sure was there, but they found it now. But there's a weird little technological field surrounding that, so they beam down to investigate it and immediately get captured. That sounds a little familiar, is all. And we've got, apart from the fact that Dax is involved, which, is always a highlight for, didn't say that, and the fact that they get arrested by Chief Wiggum rather than, the male Countess Everdeen, is the only differences. And, okay, it balloons out in a different direction in the end, and, it has some interesting points to make in it, but if they'd put it in 6 episodes' time, it would have been a much better received by me personally, at least. But that's my biggest problem with it, anyway. The other problem is I don't understand exactly what Chief Wiggum's got going on with his understanding of technology. Because Odo gets beamed away to prove that he could beam himself away if he wanted to. And he looks baffled. He looks like, Stone Age man in front of a Stone Age man in front of any kind of technology. And he looks confused and baffled and whatever. And he comes back. And Dax even has to explain that he's going to come back. It's fine, don't worry. And yet, when she then asks him, have you searched for transporter signals? He says, yeah, it's the first thing I did. So obviously he understands, ignore that beeping. Obviously he understands, the technology involved, so why did he look so baffled before? I don't understand where that technological level is that he's at. But yeah, like I say, the problem I've got is that there's actually some interesting stuff in here. There's a couple of very interesting little debates. I know I've said before that I don't like daddy issues, but the Cisco daddy issues bit was actually quite interesting. That, how do I tell my dad that I don't want to do what he wants me to do, etc., etc. It's a well-worn trope, but it's done better here because of the way it's concluded. Although I do have to say that Daddy Cisco is far too blind. I know it's for story purposes, but far too blind to Jake's obvious discomfort. You wouldn't even have to understand English to know how unhappy Jake was with the concept of Starfleet. And I think it would have done fairly well if actually he'd come out of it, and at the end of it, when he's gone, actually, I don't really care, do what makes you happy. If he'd actually come out of it and said, yeah, I know you weren't interested, come on, everyone knows that, but you had to make that decision on your own, and you had to challenge me and to tell me that you wanted to do what you do. That was a little test to prove that, you've got to do what you want to do with your life. Congratulations, you passed the test. Here, have a drink. And I think that would have been a better and more interesting way of doing it, personally. Although it would have made Cisco look a bit of a dick, so I can see why they didn't. And the other one, for me, the big moral quandary, comes at the end, or it's not even painted as a big moral quandary, but it is for me. Is the holographic village sentient? Does it have its rights? Should it still be there? Etc., etc., etc. The measure of a man argument again, basically, except it's got a different twist on it because of the holograms. And I know we've had this argument before, but I think it deserved more than 3 minutes in a dusty field, talking to the old guy wearing whatever that was. Personally, I think it deserved more than that. And that's what annoyed me about this episode, is there were too many interesting little hooks that didn't get either got ignored or didn't get explored nearly as much as they could have been. And instead there were just gaps of 10 minutes where nothing happened. And it was just irritating. I'm looking down my notes, and I swear there's a 10-minute gap in there. I might have fallen asleep for all I know. But I am going to leave it there, because I've got some stuff that I wanted to say about changelings and dominions and all that lot, and that I cannot think of a way of phrasing it without going Section 31, and I don't think it's important enough to go Section 31 for. But I will say that it regards Odo's decision to change into the spinning top thing in front of the one who's actually alive, the granddad. And leave it at that. That's probably too much even there, but feel free to bleep that out. Anyway, I'm going away, running out of time. Love the work, thank you very much for everything you do, and I look forward to speaking to you in a fortnight. Have a good one, guys. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, sir. But good man for avoiding spoilers. Excellent, because as much as sometimes Section 31 is necessary, it's a bloody pain to edit in, believe me. So if we can avoid it, it's always good. So thank you, sir. We will get more discussion on sentience of holograms much later on in the series.
Yes.
I like the idea that Cisco assumes he wants his boy to join Starfleet as they do it, rather than what you suggested, because yes, it would make Cisco seem a bit of a prawn otherwise. The beeping. What was the beeping?
Is your dinner done?
Yes, I don't know. Or perhaps he swore, I don't know. But it's Chief Wiggum. Arrested by Chief Wiggum. Brilliant. Fucking boy.
Jamming.
Yes. And then there are interesting parallels with the beginning of Paradise, but obviously pretty much as soon as they end up on the planet, then things go in a very different direction, thankfully. Otherwise, yes, we would be claiming that they were going back on themselves rather too much. Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next we have the Pieman.
Hello Orgs, Purry here to talk about Shadowplay. Now I actually do remember this episode fairly well, partly because there's really not much to it, but mainly because for the rather odd reason that when the Star Trek exhibition was in Edinburgh, they actually had that hologrammatic generator prop in as one of the sort of display things. They didn't have much Deep Space Nine or Voyager stuff there at the time, and that was one of the things they had. And so it always does kind of stick in memory that I've actually seen that prop up close. It's not much, but it's a thing. So as the episode goes, I'd arguably say the bit I liked a bit better about this episode was Jake coming to basically Cisco and talking to O'Brien about the fact that he doesn't want to be in Starfleet. I found that quite interesting, the idea that for once we're seeing the idea that Starfleet isn't the be-all and end-all of life in the Federation, but B, that we've got someone here, Dad's a career officer, and he doesn't want to be in Starfleet. I actually find that quite interesting. It's just a little atypical to what you normally would get in Trek, and so I quite enjoyed that. The main plot is obviously that Cisco and Dax, Odo and Dax go to a planet and find a MacGuffin, which they have to fix, and in the process, Odo, our traditional outsider, befriends a young child. We've seen this with Data about 100 times. Outsider character befriends young child. It becomes a bit charming. Do put the charming in inverted commas, and then they solve the MacGuffin, and child remembers Odo or Data forever. And really, this could be a next gen episode. There's really not much Deep Space Niney in it. And I think obviously I did remember this time that they were all holograms. That was a thing, and it's actually there's something slightly frustrating about this episode because. Okay, the Odo befriending the child actually works a little bit better because Odo seems a little more like a slightly gruff but indulgent adult, rather than Data's quite often encountering the children as a child with a sort of childlike sort of feeling, and with Data it comes across as slightly creepy, whereas you could see Odo as more of a sort of authority figure and a grown-up dealing with a child. It's actually similar to sometimes, not all those, but some of the ways he spoke were kind of the way you would speak to a young child, particularly when she's telling a story about the changeling who turns into bread. That did remind me a lot about how even I talk to children at times. I do believe I threatened to throw one of my daughter's friends into my shark tank and nearly convinced her I had one. So I've got a shark tank now. But I mean, this is the thing. This is kind of by the numbers Trek. I mean, the hologrammatic MacGuffin was literally just MacGuffin, and that's actually one of the real downsides. Is Dax. Once the episode gets going, Dax is virtually bugger all to do. She's pretty much a walking exposition machine. That's all she does. She turns up every so often, explains things are going on, fixes the MacGuffin. I mean, yes, she solves the problem entirely, but it is kind of, she doesn't really have much actually to do. She is, that could have been done by a walking plant with a voice box in it. So it's not, it wasn't offensively bad, it just didn't particularly entertain me, I think was the problem, despite the fact that I've seen one of those props. It's been in Edinburgh and everything. That's kind of, it's just, there's not too much you can say about it. Like I say, very, very standard by the numbers Trek. The thing which I found almost frustrating was right at the end, they have that bit where they start discussing, are the holograms real, where the guy says, don't switch it back on, I've been living a lie. We did have another mention of the Dominion. Again, I've heard that name, but we heard that name before. It's almost like there's continuity. When he's talking about, they're not real, we should, just keep it switched off, and he says, but they are, and there was some discussion of, are these AIs alive? And actually, if you'd not been wanting to hold back them being holograms as a twist, you could have had an interesting discussion about whether this village is just a simulation, or whether it's actually gained a life of its own. And it's kind of a shame that we didn't get that, rather than just a by the numbers outsider befriend small child episode. So, hopefully Eye of the Beholder is a bit more interesting, because we are getting into the crazier bits of Season 7 next gen. I'll be back to talk to you about that once I've seen it. Until then, bye for now.
Bye.
I think maybe we're the minority.
We are very much the minority, aren't we, the way things are going? Yes, that hologenerator prop was in the Science Museum as well for a while. Yes. We saw it there.
We did.
And yes, it's nice that the Starfleet is being proved not to be the be-all and end-all.
Yeah, that's true. And I agree, it could be a Data episode, in terms of the bit on with the Gamma Quadrant, except that the more I watch Next Generation, the more Brent Spiner annoys the fuck out of me, whereas I find Odo's portrayal charming.
Yes, I've got much more time for Odo with children than Data with children, I have to say. I think it's a fair argument that Dax doesn't have much to do. She turns up, fixes the tech, and goes home. Which I suppose proves that she's a professional, but isn't terribly interesting, I'll grant you that. But the story really wasn't a Dax story. She's just there because she's the science bod and needs to be there. Yeah. So, whereas I believe our next story is a Dax story, so if you're waiting for some Dax action, that's coming up soon. Alright, let us find out what Drew and Tracy thought of this, to see if we truly are in the minority of one, or whether they agree with us.
I think Doreen agreed with us.
Yeah, kind of. Doreen didn't have too many bad things to say about this, did she? So, yeah. Okay.
So I thought that was a nice little episode, actually.
That was a cutie one.
It was cute.
Yeah. It did start off a bit strange, like when Dax and Odo were in the shuttle and like she's gossiping about some woman gossip to him, and he's a little bit like, why are you telling me this? It's like, why are you possibly even I know not to talk to Odo about idle gossip. But then he got quite interested when he kind of she was implying that someone had the hots for him. Yes. That was a typical man, that one. Don't talk to me about gossip. Oh, someone likes me.
I like that teaser.
Tell me more.
It's good to see the prophecy, the orb of prophecy with Virile and Kira starting to come true. The old Thornbirds.
The Thornbirds in
coming out.
Earlier episodes did come out. Yeah, but you know what I mean. So they've obviously got the hots for each other.
Yeah.
And he waits. Like, they're sitting having dinner and they're obviously picking at their food, not really talking very much, but he waits to have a conversation with her while he's trying to kiss her at the same time. It's like, let's have this conversation. Yeah, priorities, love. Leave the chatting till after you've finished. All right.
Yes.
So this did have parallels with Paradise. And I did say to you halfway through this, I know what's going to happen.
You started guessing,
I didn't quite get the full story, but it was a little bit too similar. I thought that
I can see the
they didn't kind of want people to leave the village, and that's why they had the This
wasn't incredibly annoying, though, was it?
It wasn't infuriating at all. In fact, you kind of felt endeared to the lot of them.
A lot more nicer, likeable characters. I must admit, I can remember this episode. I must have.
Well, you did say that,
but one of the ones I watched.
Having never seen it before, I didn't quite know what was coming. But I thought it was endearing the way that, Odo gave his speech about, love and compassion and how people have their own
Perhaps this is what Paradise needed, a bit of Odo in it. Because, I think this episode is good because of him. He's so good acting and
can we just
the relationship.
Not start talking about Paradise, because I can already feel my blood boiling again.
Forget about Paradise.
Absolutely.
Let's carry on with this one. I enjoyed this episode, actually. I don't think it was brilliant, but It's just a nice... It's a real Star Trek episode, I think. It just ticked all the Star Trek boxes.
Absolutely. You had O'Brien doing a bit of engineering and trying to get Jake involved. You had Cisco, for me, being the perfect dad, absolutely showing his love for Jake, and I love that. You know, you had a bit of sensitivity from Odo with his little relationship that he built with Taya and things like that, and I just thought it was really nice. You know, there was nothing overcomplicated about this episode. It was just
a relaxing Star Trek watch.
Easy viewing.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'll have another one of them.
Yep.
Let's have it again.
Okay, then.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. I love the idea that this is like the inverse of Paradise.
Yeah.
That, you know, whereas that one just raised your blood pressure, this one just relaxes you and it's nice and sweet. It starts out the same and then is completely the opposite. But it's interesting they made those parallels too. So, yeah. Except not incredibly annoying.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Yeah. And I do like that. It is mental that he tries to have that conversation with her while kissing her.
Yeah. Shut up and snog.
Yeah, leave the chatting till afterwards.
Especially since it's suddenly, it literally, she's mid-snog, she leaves him there holding the plates.
Yes.
So look on his face, what did I say?
Oh, dear.
Brilliant. Okay, let's do our Next Generation episode then.
That doesn't fill me with hope. What's it called?
Eye of the Beholder.
It began with a terrifying vision.
No! Don't!
Worf?
That leads Troy into a forbidden affair.
Why didn't we do this a long time ago?
But behind the romance...
I will meet you in your quarters later.
...lies a telepathic nightmare.
I know what I have to do.
That pushes her to the darkest edge of destruction.
Stop it!
Next time on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Oh, so that trailer... What? Why is it a forbidden affair? What? Bizarre. The episode starts, excitingly enough, with red alert. Right in the midst of the action, Geordi can't shut down the warp core, and they're having to vent plasma, which is a very nice effect. All this
purple.
Yes, very great. As they prepare to jettison the core, Riker and Worf make their way to the nacelle control room, which we've not seen before. It's a new set. It looks okay. And the view into the plasma chamber is very impressive. A nicely achieved effect with the plasma stream going. In charge is Lieutenant Nara, who's played by Nancy Harewood, who apparently was Marina Sirtis' stand-in, which explains why she's quite a shorty herself.
Okay.
She has extensive face makeup.
Oh, my...
What does this look like to you?
It looks like a vagina.
Yeah, phew! You see, I was really worried. My mind had gone to a smutty place. Henceforth, she'll be referred to as Lieutenant Flaps.
Oh! That's your episode title, Lieutenant Flaps.
I may have broken Anne-Marie at this point. Funny face. She's got a very funny face. Very fishy breath as well. Anyway, Lieutenant Flaps explains that the person who's standing by the open... I was going to say flap then. No. Panel.
Flange.
Oh, crud. Are we going to get through this? It was Lieutenant Daniel Kwan, who's threatening to jump through a force field into the plasma stream. Okay. How is it possible to jump through a force field? Is it like a one-way force field? Does such things exist? Well, let's face it, force fields don't exist yet, so...
No, they say later on that after a certain amount of time, if something goes wrong, the force field...
That's right, they have to vent the
degrades.
plasma... Well, no, they have to vent the plasma because the force field won't be able to hold the energy in for very long. That's fine. But how is it possible for him to jump through the force field that's holding the plasma out? Bizarre. And apparently, according to Memory Alpha anyway, the idea that this force field is strong enough to keep this high energy that's powering the ship in is fiction in itself, because if you had that sort of energy on tap, you wouldn't need the plasma in the first place. Anyway, science.
It's all a load of bollocks anyway.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, what are they doing in the nacelle control room?
They're controlling the plasma stream, obviously. I don't know. It's clearly a very exciting job.
Just reminds me of that B5 episode with that guy spending the entire show wandering around with that thing. He didn't know what he did.
Yeah. Riker creeps up on Dan, who's apparently half Napian. He has a massive cobra on his forehead. That's his makeup effect. We'll see another Napian in Season 3 Deep Space Nine, so at least this isn't a one alien wonder. Whereas Lieutenant Flaps is, thankfully. Funny they never used that effect again, isn't it? Can you imagine when the makeup artist did that? Everybody looked at him like, no. An excellent effect shot anyway. The lieutenant jumps into the plasma stream and Riker punches the bulkhead in frustration. So it's quite an impressive teaser. Mitchell! Yes, quite. He's not related to anybody, so he can't be a Mitchell, okay.
Oh, sorry.
There we are. But it's an impressive teaser. I'll give him the due for that. And partly because the effect of the plasma stream is really good.
Yeah.
Okay, in the ready room, Riker reflects that Quan was fine the day before, and indeed pleased that Riker had complimented him on his work. Troy also wasn't aware of any unhappiness when meeting with him recently. Picard comments that he's never dealt with a crew member committing suicide before, underlining that this isn't the sort of thing that normally happens in Trek. In this wonderful future where everybody's happy and stuff, suicide isn't normally a feature. He charges Worf and Troy with investigating what's gone on. He also gives Geordi permission to exceed warp speed limitations to get to a medical crisis.
Yeah, I noted that because...
referring to force of nature. Data is confused by suicide as a concept, and Geordi explains things to him and he realises that he felt that way when developing into a sentient life form. It's a very long scene.
So he didn't have any feelings.
Oh, it's padding. It's terrible padding scene. Worf and Troy find Quan's quarters tidy, and his final log entry is quite upbeat. The counsellor speaks to Ensign Calloway, who's his partner, and a medical technician.
Who can't act for fuck.
She's not great, as you know. She reflects that Dan was worried about Lieutenant Nara feeling threatened about him wanting her job. We learn that Napians are partially empathic. And we get the classic line...
What does it mean to be partially empathic? Does it mean you know when someone's hungry but not when they want to eat?
No, I guess it's you get an impression of what somebody thinks but you can't be sure, I guess.
That's a bit fucking useless, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, that's because he's only half Napian, isn't he? So.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think, partially empathic is a bit sort of, Well,
it's not something anybody would aim for, is it? Hey, I'm partially empathic. But there you go, that's how he's ended up.
Okay.
Well, then we get the classic line, and yeah, I know you Lieutenant Nara isn't a great actor, but I defy anybody to produce this line in any sort of convincing way. It's not like Dan to take his own life. What the fuck? He's never done that before. Well, yeah, funny that. Oh dear. Let's face it, it's not something anybody makes a habit of. Troy speaks to Nara. And we can tell that she's a body double because they're both short people. And in fact, Nancy Harwood is even shorter than Marina Sirtis.
How short is Marina Sirtis then?
Pretty short. 5 foot nothing, I think. Something like that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I just always thought that she looked short because people like Michael Dorn are
really
6'3".
No, it's a bad combination. I know you don't like the partnership, but in terms of height, it is a bit of an unfortunate combination. Whenever they kiss, he has to bend right down and she's pretty much lifted up. And at times, apparently, she was standing on a box as well. Anyway, Lieutenant Flaps tells that Quan was involved in developing the Enterprise's engines back on Utopia Planitia. Troy goes up to the access panel to the plasma chamber and gets overwhelmed by emotions present in the room. Worf goes to see Troy, who tells him there's nothing in Quan's logs to suggest a problem. They're very formal together.
Yeah.
Which clearly suggests that champagne dinner went nowhere in Parallels. More of which later. Worf excuses himself, worried that Troy needs a rest, but she seems to want him to stay. But he leaves. In Temp Forward, Riker clearly has a hot date.
He's got a
lady in red. Yeah, she is. Oh God, no! I don't have to play that, do I? Oh crap! I'm going to call her Lieutenant Crazy Hair. I didn't catch her name, but she has got very crazy hair. Worf asks if he's involved with her. But Riker says he's not sure yet. It's probably the hair. Worf makes a mess of approaching Riker about going out with Troy. Now, this is all reality at the moment. Up until this point, okay? Then we get a scene where Troy returns to the nacelle control room with Worf, who's supposed to be keeping an eye on her. She opens the access panel, and we see the cool view again. And from here on inwards, most of the rest of the episode is all a dream. Yeah.
Even taking medical supplies to Bastard too.
Well, that was happening beforehand, and that features in her dream. But yeah, so it's reality. But obviously, well, from this point onwards, all events are a dream. Okay, so I kind of feel like stopping now and just saying "Take off," to be honest. But there's some interesting stuff here. And when I first was watching it, I was like, oh, this is an interesting whodunit.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It is an interesting whodunit until you realise that 2/3 of it is in her head.
Oh, see, what I thought was happening is the guy who I recognised from somewhere,
yeah,
who's Mr. Telepathic Man, right? What I thought was he was fucking with her mind. Because although the inhibitor would turn off her empathy, if he's telepathic, they always create the idea that telepathy is stronger than empathy, so we'd still be able to mess with their head. So that's what I thought was happening, you see.
Which would have been a far more satisfying ending than the one we got.
Yeah, it would have been.
Okay, so we have Troy having a vision of a woman who's pleading, and she's wearing engineering overalls. And then there's another person wearing engineering overalls who's your nasty man, who's Lieutenant Walter Pierce. He's played by the always spooky-looking Mark Rolston. Who's probably most famous for playing Drake in Aliens. He's one of the ones that get the really big guns.
Okay.
Yeah. He's Boggs in Shawshank Redemption.
Okay.
Who's the horrible guard.
Yes.
He's Hans in Lethal Weapon 2.
That, I think, is what I'm remembering.
Been a long time since I've seen him that. He's also in RoboCop 2, which I think I've not... I saw that at the cinema. I don't think I've watched it since. Even though I've got the RoboCop trilogy on DVD, I've only ever watched the first one.
Okay.
He's also Carl, the murderer, who Talia had to mind wipe in season 1 of Babylon 5. Yeah, The Quality of Mercy. He always plays freaky people, basically.
Yes.
Except for in Aliens, where he's not so much freaky as badass.
Yeah. No, I'm recognising from Babylon 5.
Yeah, I think that's probably where we've seen him most recently.
Yeah.
Anyway, Troy wakes up back on the Enterprise, but it was clearly when it was being worked on at Utopia Planitia. Worf is nowhere to be seen. We have the old cliche of shaky cam indicating a dream state as Troy follows the sound of laughter. He sees the woman from earlier kissing another man in engineering overalls. They both laugh at her, then she wakes up with Worf in front of her. Crusher suggests Troy was seeing through Quan's eyes. She suggests an inhibitor to help Troy cope with being back in the nacelle room. Troy thinks she recognises Lieutenant Pierce, so goes through the Utopia Planitia personnel files and realises that he's currently serving in engineering. We discover he was Lieutenant Quan's supervisor 8 years ago. He claims things went smoothly back then. Troy points out that she can tell if he's lying, but then later admits that this was a bluff, as she could pick up nothing from him, so he may be telepathic, despite being human.
Unless she's part Ferengi or the pig ones.
Yes. Troy and Worf both think he was holding something back. In our quarters, they do the long goodbye thing, which just reminded us of our first date, where we spent about an hour saying goodbye to each other before you finally gave in and kissed me.
Yes.
And it was in the underground, Charing Cross, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the guy who was on duty gave us a round of applause.
Yes.
And then told us we'd missed our last train.
I think he gave us a round of applause and then went, finally.
Yeah.
And then told us where to get the night bus.
Yeah. Eventually they kiss, and apparently more happen, because next morning we see Worf without his baldric and Troy's asleep in bed. He wakes up...
See, that just makes me think that Worf has lost Tony Robinson.
No, not that sort of baldric, you banana.
Sorry.
He wakes her up with a kiss and offers her breakfast, and she says that breakfast can wait. And then we have a funny scene where Crusher hails first Troy, then Worf.
Yeah.
Troy goes to sick bay for an inhibitor, and Worf arrives with Ensign Calloway discussing the medical supplies they're transporting. He gives her a look, and when he's due to leave with Troy, gets called back by the medic, causing the counsellor to get all suspicious-like. Back in the nacelle control room, Lieutenant Flaps reveals the panel Quan was working on probably hadn't been touched since the ship was built. Troy has another memory flashback when the panel is removed. So this is a flashback within a dream. This is really freaky. And Geordie and Data find a skeleton behind the wall. Troy gets a top-up on her inhibitor and gets all suspicious about Worf and Calloway again. They identify the skeleton as belonging to Ensign Marla Finn, the woman from Troy's vision, who was reported as missing. They then realise that Kwan didn't arrive till after Finn's death, so Troy couldn't be seen through his eyes. Worf suggests it could be Pierce if he is indeed telepathic, and Troy realises she was seeing the lieutenant's face in a reflection, so she was seeing through his eyes. Pierce enters Troy's quarters. She calls security, but the lieutenant claims he was sent there by Worf. Counselor calls for the Klingon, but when he doesn't answer, gets the computer to locate him, and he's in Calloway's quarters. Ensign Kellogg, who's a returning security bod, turns up to arrest Pierce, whilst Troy storms off to catch Worf in the act. He and Calloway laugh as Finn and the other guy did in Troy's vision. Counselor shoots Worf dead, runs off and bumps into Pierce, who tells her that she knows what she has to do. At this point you're going, what the f is going on? It's a shame it turns out to all be a dream, isn't it? She heads to the nacelle control room, opening the hatch, but is pulled away by Worf and she's back into reality again. We get a crap what really happened scene in the conference room. And yes, everything from Troy asking for the hatch to be opened when she was there with Worf only happened in her head. So most of the episode was indeed a dream. It's Dallas all over again. She spent most of the episode having a shower. Which, let's face it, I'd be quite happy to watch. Sorry. Data has found out that Pierce's grandmother was Betazoid, so he was indeed telepathic, but apparently Lieutenant and the others were killed in an accidental plasma discharge during the Enterprise's construction.
Hang on. Pierce's grandma was Betazoid, so he was telepathic. Mm-hmm. Troy's mum's Betazoid, she's only empathic.
I believe it's a roll of the dice, the way the genetics works. So you could be full telepathic, you could be empathic. As it happens, yeah, that's the way it worked out. I think that's the thinking, but I could be wrong. Anyway, Troy believes that Pierce was responsible for the other two's death because they were having an affair, and he killed them, then committed suicide himself. And then, this is the worst bit of it all, we get some bollocks about Pierce's empathic residue getting imprinted in the bulkhead. Remember, in the last podcast, I said this was all about a ghost, I thought. Well, this is why I thought that. Yeah. This is the only bit I remembered about it, was this shitty explanation that effectively it's the ghost of Pierce haunting Troy, or something. What a pile of wank. And when Kwan removed the bulkhead, it somehow released this empathic impression. Good grief. Then we get a cheesy ending in which Worf asks who killed him in Troy's vision, but at which point we don't care. I mean, I was enjoying this episode, right up until the telepathic residue nonsense when you realise that most of the episode is a bloody dream. I mean, it could have been a really interesting whodunit, but no, they jizzed out some crappy all-a-dream explanation. I mean, how desperate are they getting for ideas at this point?
Fucking hell. See, if it had been Freaky Man,
yes,
messing
fine
with Troy's head, they could have ended it with that, couldn't they?
And he's a very convincing Freaky Man. That would have been fine if they discovered that it was him all along. Old Man Withers
messing with her
head, yes.
So that even if it wasn't
far more satisfying than that it was all a dream.
Yeah, because even if it turned out that a limited amount of it was real, if it was him messing with her head, there's a protagonist there,
yes,
isn't
exactly.
there? Do you know what I mean? And he's trying to drive her to suicide because she's worked out that he's guilty of something. So it's about him. So even if the same amount of the episode...
Yeah, you wouldn't have to change much. You wouldn't have to change much.
You only have to change the ending. And it's not, it was all a dream.
Yeah.
The ending is... He was trying to get her to commit suicide and messing with her head because she discovered was the truth.
Yeah. But it turns out that he was never on the Enterprise.
Oh, I know, that's the worst bit. He never even was bloody pissing there.
And just to add insult to injury, of course, you've got this teasing approach to Worf and Troy's relationship. And this time, rather than last time it was in a parallel universe, this time it's all in Troy's head. It's like the writers want to put these two together but haven't got the balls to actually do it. So they're just going to do it in parallel universes and dream sequences.
Fucking hell.
So that was a waste of time, wasn't it? Basically, that's my feeling about this episode. Bloomin' heck.
One question, though.
Yes.
I know it was a dream sequence, but it was all in Troy's head, right? You know she takes her uniform off and puts the old outfit on.
The pinky one, yeah.
Well, it's grey and lilac.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe Worf likes that, and that's why she's wearing it? Because if she's not in uniform, wouldn't she be wearing her ordinary clothes? So why change into that outfit at this point in the, given that she now wears the uniform, unless she thinks that maybe it will turn him on?
I don't know. I don't care. It's all in her head. Why should it matter what she's wearing? She could be wearing a bunny suit. I mean, it's just... Ugh.
I can't imagine Worf appreciating that.
No. Oh, dear.
Riker, yes, but Worf, no.
We find out whether people actually like this episode. I mean, I can't believe it's possible, but you never know.
You never know.
We'll start with a mark.
And the mark writes, Eye of the Beholder, or SSI and TSR's masterwork. Any ideas, SSI, TSR?
No, not unless he explains it later on.
Okay, he might do.
Folks, you really do have to assume that we're stupid, because
yes.
We are stupid. So...
You make references to this thing called telly. We mostly watch DVDs and Netflix. Anyway, sorry. He says, the Eye of the Beholder trilogy... What? And just made of... Oh, the TNG episode. Are you sure? It kind of sucks. Eye of the Beholder or telepathically induced delusion bullshit. It was all a dream.
I think I've just got it.
Have you?
TSR did Dungeons and Dragons. The Beholder was that thing with all the eyeballs. That's what he's making reference to. A picture would have helped, Mark. Because we are slower than the average bear.
Yeah. I'm still at a loss, I'm afraid. He might have got it. I ain't got a clue.
I think I've got it.
I don't know. Sorry. Anyway. He says, the murder mystery is something Star Trek seems unable to occasionally resist, even though it more often than not seems incapable of successfully pulling it off.
I was going to say, they should have learned by now that it just doesn't work.
The thing about murder is it requires human failings, and years of TNG have beat into our minds the idea that such a thing is beyond the capability of elite Starfleet officers. For that matter, the notion of suicide seems almost foreign, and yet Eye of the Beholder begins with one.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder how fluffy this utopia is.
Well, to be fair, the suicide at the beginning, of course, is enforced upon the chap. He wouldn't have naturally committed suicide, but it's as a result of this empathic echo wank.
But this prompts an investigation by the best detective Starfleet has, but unfortunately he's having a needed break, so Troy does it in his place. What would that be?
I don't know, maybe that's Data.
Is it?
Not sure. He could have done the whole Sherlock Holmes thing. Would have been a lot better, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's not like Dan to take his own life is one of the more amusing comments in this episode.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he only does that weekends.
Yeah, thanks. Dan doesn't usually take his own life. I'd say this is the first. Let's wait and see if he does it again.
Yeah.
The sci-fi light twist is that Kwan was part telepath, as is Troy. Coincidence? I think not. Where it stumbles is in its melodramatic silliness and overall execution. The Worf-Troy romance, which was on shaky ground to begin with because it felt so arbitrary, even when you consider its hinted at genesis in parallels, devolves into an exercise in absurd jealousy when Troy finds Worf making out with Galloway and they both laugh at her. But it's not real, so who gives a shit?
Not quite, yes. Sigh.
Yes, the sigh.
Yeah, let's see if Doreen liked this. Not that we're going to judge her. Much. I was not overly impressed by Eye of the Beholder. Good start. However, I have a feeling a bit like the Argyle Smurf. By the way, I thought he was Scottish until I heard his voice. I don't know much about football teams. Did the last time, I might be in the minority, as I've liked a few episodes that everyone else didn't. I breathed a sigh of relief when my glowing review of Masks wasn't in 7/16. I watched it at the beginning of my holidays, that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. At least the ends in suicide was acknowledged, and he was grieved for as much as Next Generation does. However, Deanna seemed to be doing way too much overacting for my tastes nowadays. Yeah, she's not great in this, to be fair. The line manager had some nose.
Yeah,
that's one way to put it. Her bumpy forehead went on and Ariston. I did not enjoy the wee teaser thing with the ensign sounding like he'd been bullied into committing suicide, and he was standing here saying, and they were just laughing and laughing. To my ears, the programme was making light of verbal abuse. However, the later scenes show how horrible the laughing was, But even then, everything seemed so overacted and melodramatic, it really grated on my nerves. It's probably just me, but I wanted to shout the victims' feelings matter. Can't you see it's no joke to them? Anyway, I'll leave that there for now before I say too much, or something I'll regret, and just chalk it up as more of the same from season 7. That's about right.
Yeah.
And with Anne-Marie, I don't get what Deanna and Worf see in each other. Well, from this one, clearly it makes no sense. Oh dear. Thank you, Dory.
Thank you.
Yes, we're bemused too. Let's find out if Drew and Tracy made some sense of this.
So this was quite an opener for this episode, wasn't it? Dealing with suicide.
Yes, I know. It's surprising. You don't see that very often.
Well, you don't see that on the Enterprise at all. So it's a very moving start, you know, them being all kind of morose and trying to think of, oh, well, if I'd done this, you know, I could have saved him and stuff like that. So it was quite sad from the get-go for this episode. And it wasn't really surprising that Data was struggling with the concept of, you know, suicide. And I think it was quite poignant that he was asking
I found it a little bit
Georgie, but he did.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't play on it. They asked, you know,
it
they
was
just
a
broached
short
it
scene,
very, very short. And you know, you
Fair
knew
enough.
because he kind of, you know, struggles to understand how humans fight to preserve life, how someone can then commit suicide. I think it's a very valid point.
Yeah.
But they didn't dwell on it.
No.
So how comes Troy's tea comes out exactly as she wants it with milk, right? And all she asks for, was it something like trillion tea or something like that?
Urilium tea, I think it was, yeah.
But yet, on Deep Space Nine, O'Brien has to stand there for 10 minutes saying over again how he wants it. Is it?
Oh, is it double
African tea,
double strength?
double
whatever,
strength, no sugar, something like this. It's like, this is a little bit of favouritism. Or a bit of better technology going on the Enterprise, I think.
You know what? That's what it could be.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is the canon in universe explanation.
Right.
Okay, Enterprise, far better computer that's got human tastes. Deep Space Nine, don't forget, he's all Cardassian technology. Not as good.
Okay.
So you've got to explain it.
Well,
There we
O'Brien
go.
needs to move ships in, doesn't he?
He does.
So check out Riker in his funky civvy gear.
You're always saying this.
Because,
He's always wearing that gear off duty.
But let me just tell you, right? How much did he look like the Cheshire Cat in 10 Forward talking to Worf about, check it out, look how I've pulled for the night. If you were with
He was doing the Riker manoeuvre.
He was. If you were with a date and you saw him like grinning like that at the bar talking to another bloke, you'd be like, you ain't getting none now, mate. You just sold out. But he did just look funky. He just seems to look wider in his civvy gears.
He does.
Than he does in his uniform.
I don't think he needs his shoulder pads in his uniform, does he? His shoulders are actually like that.
So Walter Pierce, the baddie.
Yeah, that guy. He's always a baddie, isn't he?
But he
if you see him in the programme, you're like, he's a baddie.
No, as soon as we see him, we're like,
yeah.
he's going to be bad.
He's got the face of evil.
He's got a face of an android.
Yes,
and the voice of Hal from 2001.
I mean, he was very emotionless, wasn't he? But I think that was his character, because I've certainly seen him acting emotions. He was just being completely like a psychopath, like completely
but in
not
this, if they
putting any emotion
said,
into
oh
it.
yeah, you know, he's an android, I wouldn't have thought any different, because you're just like, fine, you're playing a character.
Yeah.
So I did do a bit of a whip woo with Troy and Worf.
I bet when Michael Dorn read the script to this,
he was like, giggity. I bet he really, he was like, yes, it's about time. But then I felt quite sorry for Troy at the end of it, because actually you don't know whether she imagined it all or whether they did have a bit
I think
of
it was all imagination, wasn't it? I
don't
wasn't
know.
entirely too sure.
He was still very tender to her afterwards, wasn't he?
Yeah, because at the end of it, there was no evidence that any of it had actually happened, was it? It was only Troy. I wonder, like, in reality, if Picard, because we know he's very logical, whether he would have just said, I'm not sure about all this, it could just all be in your mind. Couldn't it?
No, because there was obviously something going on, because that guy committed suicide because he saw kind of the same things that Troy did. But
okay, or perhaps Troy had created all of this because she couldn't handle the fact that someone committed suicide under her watch.
Possibly. It's very tricky.
I don't know.
We'll never know.
I'm
We're not
second
empathic,
guessing it. Second guessing it.
You know.
I thought this episode was all right.
It was all right.
But that's as far as I go. All right.
It was kind of a sub story, wasn't it? It wasn't an all crew episode, so they were all in it in bits and parts.
Not really exciting enough to be a good episode, but there was nothing bad about it.
It was better than Masks, and that's all I'm concentrating on.
Plus, I completely knew everything about it.
Well,
I don't know why.
You've seen him all about 200 times.
It's just an episode that you remember a lot, so...
It was alright. Bit of action, bit of emotion, bit of thought. It was alright. It wasn't the worst.
Leave it there then.
That'll do. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's better than Masks, I'll grant you that.
Yeah.
But then, so there's a kick in the groin. I mean, the fact that there was a certain degree of confusion as to how much was actually real and how much wasn't is all you need to know about this episode, really. It's a waste of time. But yes, Worf manages to be a bit of a babe magnet in this, doesn't he? With two women going after him. Wow. Except it's all in Troy's head. What does that say about Troy? Anyway. Yes, I know it's all manipulation by Mr. Dead Empathic Echo guy. Flipping heck. Right, Purry. Save us, Purry.
Hello again, Purry here to talk about Eye of the Beholder. Yet another hit from the random episode name generator for Star Trek The Next Generation. So, yeah, bit of an odd one, this one. I wouldn't exactly say it was entirely enjoyable. Nice for Troy to get an episode to herself. I did feel a bit cheated, and considering I remembered a lot of the plot, I did still feel a bit cheated about the "it was all a dream" bit. That said, I did like the new nacelle room set. I don't know if it's redressed as something else, but it was quite neat to get the big sort of picture of the inside of the nacelle with the plasma coils and stuff like that. Was quite cool, and it had quite a dramatic start for an episode. But really, other than that, it was kind of Troy going around having flashes and feeling things and that sort of thing. And I was going to shout at the psychic echo embedded in the wall from a plasma explosion that gave her all this info, but to be honest, we've had data possessed by a Greek dish and various other things, and we've got more to come. So I think now I'm just going with the crazy, to be honest. Yeah, sure, why not? Psychic echoes trapped in the wall. Yeah, fine. But I don't know. I thought they were going somewhere else with the episode when I first saw it. I remember at the start, I thought where we're going to go on to something about uncovering the kind of hidden life of this guy. But no, it was just a thing happened back at the yards, and I got a wee bit annoyed when we saw that real easy hint when she had her flashback to Utopia Planitia that she conveniently looked around to see a suitcase with Utopia Planitia written on it. Well, that's handy. Good thing none of those are just kicking about. I mean, God, I've got stuff kicking around my work labelled from various other depots, and I don't think anyone will look around and say, my God, I'm actually in the Motherwell depot. But like I say, I just didn't really feel the mystery this time. There is also the bit that she must have at some point realised she was dreaming when Worf starts laughing and flirting. But aside from that, really, no, this one's... you could see they were trying for something, but I don't really think they went the right way for it. So all it remains for me to say is do keep up the good work. It's a very good podcast, and I will hopefully talk to you about the next couple of episodes. Until then, bye.
Bye! I think Purry's suffering from some sort of Stockholm syndrome at this point with season 7. He's going with the crazy, and I can't help feeling that's not a wise move, sir. It really isn't.
No. But I do love your turn of phrase. We've had data possessed by a Greek dish. I can get on with an empathic echo in a blob in a wall. Yeah.
A bit cheated. Oh, my life. Yeah. And yes, you're right. The title. Where's the title come in? Season 7. Really? I mean, it has this bad reputation. It's been so long since I've seen it, and it turns out that actually the reputation is completely deserved. Yeah. Except for Lower Decks. That has been the one saving grace so far.
Yeah, that's true.
The rest has been at best meh, and at worst bloody awful.
Yes, it's terrible.
Crapping hell. Well, can next time's episode be any better?
Well, what are they? What are the episodes?
Well, we're recording on Thursday, the 1st of October.
Oh, gosh.
And the next... I know, time flies, doesn't it? And the Next Generation episode we'll be covering is Genesis!
The one where Barclay becomes a spider.
Yep, Spider Barclay.
Spider Barclay does whatever a Spider Barclay can.
Exactly. We're into crazy nuts territory still, aren't we? Let's face it.
Yes, it's something to do with T-cells, I think.
Well, we shall see.
Is the Deep Space Nine one good?
I can't remember. It's called Playing God.
That doesn't sound brilliant.
And it involves Dax taking another Trill initiate by the hand. and I remember him, but I don't remember the plot.
Right.
Yes. So that'll be a voyage of discovery for us, I think. Or rediscovery, anyway.
Or something. Thing. Yes.
Yes. But I almost guarantee it'd be better than Genesis.
I liked that when I first saw it. Yeah.
It is nuts, though, isn't it?
Yeah. I think maybe maybe by this point I had the same Stockholm syndrome as Harry. And I just went with the crazy.
I think that's going to have to be the solution, isn't it?
I think that's what I did. Yeah. Doesn't Deanna end up as a newt or something?
Something like that. Anyway, thank you for hanging in with the crazy folks.
Yeah.
Thank you for those who contributed to this podcast. Much appreciated. And we'll catch you next time. Cheery bye.
Bye-bye.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey,
the bOrgCast is brought to you by the lovely people at GeekPlanetOnline.com.
All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only, and no copyright infringement is intended.
To contact us, you can use the forums at GeekPlanetOnline.com.
Visit our Tumblr site at bOrgCast.tumblr.com, where you'll find images accompanying the episodes discussed in this cast.
Send email messages or MP3s to BORGCast@GeekPlanetOnline.com.
Or you can contact us via Twitter on rev_org or bOrgCastAmmo. #bOrgCast.
Kowalski, status report.
Well, the good news is, this song is almost over.
Well, that's music to my ears.
Shut it down!